Narrator, soft, mysterious tone. Imagine this. You're going about your day, checking your inbox, maybe responding to a few work emails, chatting with friends, when suddenly, one email catches your attention. The sender's name, your deceased aunt. It's impossible, right? You double-check it. The email's timestamp. It's from after her funeral. How could that be? Could this be a mistake? Or is there something more, something otherworldly at play here? Cut to a close-up of a person staring at their screen in shock, hands trembling as they hover over the mouse. Narrator, with a slight, intrigued pause. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? You're probably wondering, how could this happen? Can technology really defy death? Well, you're about to find out. Stick with me, because the answer to this mystery might just leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about life, death, and the space between. And by the end of this video, you'll uncover the truth behind what investigators are still trying to piece together. Are you ready to dive into a story that will make you rethink the boundaries of reality? Because what you're about to hear is a real-life puzzle, one that baffled everyone involved, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Quick flash of chilling images, the email inbox, a funeral photo, investigators sifting through data, then back to the screen. Narrator, building suspense. It all started with a woman named Emma. Now, Emma had always been close to her Aunt Sarah, who, unfortunately, passed away under strange circumstances just 6 months ago. Everyone had gathered, mourned, said their goodbyes, and moved on, or so they thought. Then, one day, as Emma was sitting down to her daily routine, her phone buzzed. An email had arrived. But not just any email, it was from Aunt Sarah. She froze. She had to double-check it. The name was unmistakable. And the timestamp. It was dated for after the funeral. Impossible. What would you do in that moment? Would you ignore it, thinking it's just some bizarre glitch in the system? Or would you open it, letting curiosity guide you into the unknown? Cut to Emma, looking confused, her eyes darting across the screen, hands shaking as she opens the email. Narrator, leaning in, voice quiet but intense. But here's where the plot thickens. Inside that email was not just some cryptic message. No, there was something else. A detailed description of events that Emma could not possibly have known. Personal details about family members, secrets no one had ever shared. Not to mention, the message ended with a chilling warning: you are being watched. A beat of silence, the screen darkens for a moment, then it lights up again, showing a group of investigators in a cluttered office, analyzing the email. Narrator, calm, but now with an unsettling tone. What was more disturbing was the timestamp. How could Emma's aunt, who had been buried 6 months ago, send a message from the grave? No one could make sense of it. Not the tech experts, not the investigators, and certainly not Emma herself. That's when the police got involved, trying to unravel a mystery that seemed too bizarre to be true. But the deeper they dug, the more questions they uncovered, each one more bizarre than the last. Was it a hoax? A glitch? Or was someone, or something, trying to send a message from beyond the grave? A quick montage of detectives sifting through evidence, tense looks exchanged between them. Narrator, speaking directly to the viewer now, more personal, more intense. So here's where you come in. I want you to think carefully. What would you do if this happened to you? Would you ignore it, push it aside, and chalk it up to technology malfunctioning? Or would you, like Emma, dig deeper, searching for answers, even if those answers led you to places you never expected to go? Cut to a shot of Emma looking at the email one more time, this time her face filled with determination. Narrator, voice growing softer, but still full of suspense. We all want to know the truth. But the truth, it's not always easy to find. And sometimes, once we uncover it, we wish we hadn't. Because the deeper you dig into this mystery, the darker it gets. You'll hear the shocking revelations that followed Emma's discovery, as she spirals further into a web of unanswered questions and chilling events. The investigators? They were stumped at first, but what they uncovered next? It's enough to make you wonder just how much control we have over technology, and the dead. A pause. The music softens, and the screen flickers briefly. Narrator, with an almost whisper-like tone, gripping the viewer's attention. But what really happened here? Why did this email, this message from the dead, arrive at all? And who, or what, was behind it? Could it be a coincidence? Or something more sinister? Keep watching, because the truth will come out. And by the time you reach the end of this story, your perception of life, death, and the digital world might never be the same again. The screen goes dark for a moment, then a quick flash of the email's subject line, email from Aunt Sarah. Narrator, with a soft, ominous chuckle, you're not going to want to miss this. Trust me. It's a story you'll be thinking about long after you click away. Stay tuned, because what happens next? Well, that's where the real mystery begins. Cliffhanger. The next shot is of Emma, sitting in a dark room, staring at a new email notification on her phone, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. Narrator, final, whispered words the next message. It's waiting for her. And it's even more disturbing than the last. Fade to black. The eerie music builds, leaving the audience in suspense as the video transitions to the next part. Emma had never been one to believe in anything that couldn't be explained logically. A successful graphic designer living in a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs of Los Angeles, she had a life that many would envy. A steady job, close friends, a loving family. Yet, in the weeks leading up to the email that turned her life upside down, things had started to feel a little off. Her Aunt Sarah's passing, though tragic, seemed like just another sad chapter in the inevitable cycle of life. Emma had mourned the loss, attended the funeral, and found solace in the support of her tight-knit circle. But there was always a lingering feeling, a sense of unfinished business. Aunt Sarah had been more than family to Emma. She was a mentor, a confidant, and a source of comfort in times of stress. Emma remembered the long evenings they spent together at Sarah's old house, sipping tea and chatting about life. Sarah had lived alone for years, having outlived most of her peers. She had always been the type to give advice on everything, from work struggles to relationship woes, and she was never shy about sharing her perspective. Emma had relied on her wisdom, even when it came to things as trivial as which coffee shop had the best latte or the best place to find vintage jewelry. But Sarah's death had been unexpected, an abrupt, late-night fall that left Emma reeling with unanswered questions. The official cause of death was ruled as an accident, but deep down, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. Still, she did her best to move on, as we all do when the sting of loss feels too great. Emma's days were spent working late into the night, managing her freelance projects, and trying to find joy in small things. She spent time with friends, occasionally hanging out with her college roommate, Allison, who had always been the more adventurous one. They'd grab drinks after work and talk about their lives, occasionally venturing into the realm of conspiracy theories and supernatural phenomena. Allison often teased Emma about her no-nonsense attitude toward the paranormal, urging her to open her mind a little more. Emma would laugh it off, but in the back of her mind, she always wondered why she couldn't just believe in the things her aunt used to talk about, stories of strange encounters, inexplicable events, and whispers of things unseen. Then, on a Tuesday morning, just like any other, Emma checked her inbox and saw that subject line. Email from Aunt Sarah. She froze. Her heart raced, and for a second, she thought it was some kind of sick joke. Maybe one of her friends had hacked her email, set it up as a prank. But the timestamp, it was dated months after her aunt's funeral. Was this some kind of twisted message from the beyond? Could Sarah, somehow, be reaching out to her from beyond the grave? Emma quickly clicked open the email, her fingers trembling. What she found inside shocked her to the core. The message itself wasn't some vague cryptic note. It was precise, direct, and deeply personal. The first line simply read, "I know what you've been hiding." Her stomach twisted in knots. Hiding? What could her aunt possibly know about her that no one else did? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but she couldn't bring herself to delete the email. Instead, she kept reading. The words went on to describe moments in her life that no one had ever talked about, let alone shared. Secrets that Emma herself had buried in the recesses of her mind. Memories of long-forgotten childhood incidents, things only her aunt could have known. But what made it worse was the tone, chilling and foreboding. It was as if Sarah were not only still alive in some form, but actively watching Emma's every move. The final line left Emma with a gut-wrenching sense of dread. "You'll wish you had listened to me sooner." The initial shock wore off, and confusion set in. Could it have been a mistake? An auto-generated message that got stuck in a server somewhere? Emma's logical mind tried to rationalize the situation, but nothing about the email made sense. She immediately called Allison, hoping to make sense of it all. But Allison wasn't taking it seriously. "Emma, this is ridiculous. It's probably just spam or some hack. Maybe a bot," she suggested, sounding bored as she sipped her coffee. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As the day passed, her mind raced. The email wasn't the only strange occurrence. She started noticing odd things around her apartment, faint sounds in the middle of the night, items she knew she had placed in one spot mysteriously moved, and a strange chill that filled the room when the air conditioner wasn't even on. Emma tried to brush it all off as coincidence, as a product of stress, or perhaps even just her imagination playing tricks on her. But the more she thought about it, the more unsettling the connections seemed. Was it possible that her aunt, with all her knowledge of the supernatural, had been trying to warn her about something she hadn't understood before? Or was someone, or something, trying to manipulate her, to make her doubt her own reality? The weeks that followed were filled with sleepless nights, frantic searches on obscure forums, and a growing sense that she was being followed. Emma decided to reach out to a local tech expert to try and trace the source of the email. What she found left her even more unsettled. The email had come from an IP address that, according to the data, was untraceable. It seemed to originate from somewhere in the cloud, a place that couldn't be tracked. The investigator she spoke with suggested it could have been a clever hack or perhaps a sophisticated piece of malware. But Emma wasn't convinced. There was something about it that didn't add up. And when she revisited the email for the 10th time, her eyes caught something she hadn't seen before, a strange, almost imperceptible code hidden in the signature line. She had no idea what it meant, but it was enough to make her heart race. As if things couldn't get any stranger, Emma received a second email, this time with a simple message: "You're not safe, but you're not alone." That was when she realized just how deep she was in. Was it possible that her aunt had somehow left a message, even after her death, to warn her of something more sinister? Or was someone playing a game, one that Emma didn't fully understand yet? As Emma began to connect the dots, a chilling thought crossed her mind. Could it be someone she knew, someone close to her, who was orchestrating this entire thing? The investigation into the origins of the email was far from over. Each clue seemed to lead her deeper into a rabbit hole of cryptic messages, dead ends, and unsettling coincidences. With every turn, Emma found herself questioning everything: her own sanity, the people around her, even her memories of Aunt Sarah. Was there a connection between the strange things happening to her and the cryptic warnings in the email? Could her aunt have foreseen all of this, or was someone manipulating the situation to send Emma into a spiraling paranoia? With each new email, the stakes grew higher, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The line between reality and the supernatural was blurring, and she was caught in the middle, desperately trying to understand who or what was pulling the strings. But as she dove deeper into the mystery, one thing became clear: whoever was behind it all wasn't done with her yet. And if she didn't act soon, the consequences could be far worse than she ever imagined. As Emma tried to piece together the strange puzzle her aunt had left behind, she realized that the deeper she dug, the more elusive the truth became. The second email, the one with the cryptic warning, "You're not safe, but you're not alone," had only deepened the mystery. She was no closer to finding any solid answers, and every attempt to trace the origin of the emails led to dead ends. But something even more disturbing was starting to happen. The sense of being watched intensified, like invisible eyes were lingering just outside her vision. She found herself questioning not only the people around her but also her own mind. Was she losing touch with reality? Or was someone playing a sick game with her sanity? It started with the disappearance of the original email. One morning, she opened her inbox to review the messages again, hoping to spot something she'd missed. But when she clicked on the thread, it was gone, vanished without a trace. There was no sign of the email from Aunt Sarah, the one with the chilling message. Emma frantically searched her entire email account, checking the trash, the archive, and even the spam folder. Nothing. It was as though it had never existed at all. She tried to call the tech expert. Had he been involved in her aunt's mysterious past? And why was this photo hidden away in a box that had clearly been left untouched for years? As she sifted through the letters and the notebook, Emma's sense of unease grew. The notebook was filled with strange symbols and notes that made no sense to her at first glance, cryptic scribbles that seemed almost like a code. But one thing stood out. Scattered throughout the pages were references to someone named the Watcher. She hadn't imagined it. This wasn't just a random email or a prank. Her aunt had known about it, had been involved with it. But how? What was her connection to whatever dark forces were lurking in the shadows? Emma's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sound of a knock on the door. Startled, she quickly shoved the box back into the closet, her pulse spiking. She wasn't expecting anyone, and given the circumstances, she didn't want to deal with anyone at all. But as she peered through the peephole, she saw a familiar face: Alison. Emma hesitated, a surge of frustration welling up inside her. She had tried reaching out to Alison for support, but her friend had been so distant, so insistent that she stopped digging into the mystery. Yet, here she was, standing at her door. Emma opened it cautiously, her eyes narrowing. Alison stood there, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. There was something off about her demeanor, something that made Emma's stomach churn. Alison was always the life of the party, the one who never took anything too seriously. But now, her face was pale, her eyes darting nervously behind her. "I think I know what's going on," she continued, glancing over her shoulder, as though making sure no one was watching. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you talking about?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, despite the rising tension in her chest. Alison stepped inside quickly, shutting the door behind her with a soft click. "It's not just you," she said, lowering her voice to a near whisper. "I've been getting the emails too. The ones you've been getting. And I've been hiding it from you." Emma froze. Her mind reeled. "You've been getting them?" she asked, her voice barely above a breath. She could barely comprehend what Alison was saying. Could she be telling the truth? And if so, why hadn't she come forward sooner? Why had she kept this from Emma? Alison looked guilty, her gaze flicking away as she spoke. "I didn't want to tell you. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away, but the messages they've been sending, Emma, they're not normal. They're not like anything I've ever seen. I thought you were just overreacting at first, but then I realized, you were right. Someone or something is trying to get to us. And it's not going to stop." Emma felt the room close in around her. The walls felt like they were pressing in, suffocating her as the weight of the situation grew heavier. "But why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, feeling betrayed. Her best friend had known about this all along and had kept it a secret. Why? Was she involved in all of this somehow? Was she hiding something? Alison's eyes darted to the floor, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I didn't know how to tell you, Emma. You wouldn't believe me. I barely believed it myself. But then I started seeing things, strange things, like the Watcher was real, like they were following me. They know where we are, they know what we've been doing. And every time I try to fight it, it gets worse." Emma's thoughts were a blur. Her best friend had been lying to her all along. And now, she was telling her she had been getting the same emails, the same warnings. But if Alison had been involved from the start, why had she kept her distance? Was it fear? Guilt? Or was there something even darker at play? Emma wasn't sure she could trust her anymore. In fact, a new thought crept into her mind: was Alison hiding something from her? Had she been keeping secrets, just like Emma's aunt had? Before Emma could say anything more, there was another knock on the door, this one louder and more urgent. Both women froze. The knock was followed by a voice, muffled but distinct. "Emma. Alison. We know you're in there." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to peek outside. She could see a dark, unmarked van parked across the street, its engine running. The figure standing near the door was cloaked in shadow, but Emma could make out the outline of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, his face obscured by a baseball cap and sunglasses, despite the late hour. He was no one she recognized. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Who is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Allison's face went pale, her hand tightening around Emma's wrist. "I don't know," she replied, fear in her eyes. "But I think we need to leave. Now." But as Emma turned to grab her keys, the phone on her kitchen counter buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was an unknown number, but there was something about the area code that made her stomach lurch. It was the same area code as Sarah's old phone number, the one Emma had never called because her aunt had always been out of reach. The call rang once, twice, and then, finally, Emma picked it up. The voice on the other end was distorted, like someone was speaking through a voice changer. "You shouldn't have opened the box, Emma," the voice said, sending a cold shiver down her spine. "Now you've awakened something you can't undo." The call ended abruptly, the line going dead before Emma could say a word. Her heart was pounding in her chest. Was this it? Was this the moment she would finally learn the truth? Or was it too late for that now? What had her aunt known that she didn't? And why was someone, possibly even someone she trusted, trying so hard to stop her from finding out? As Emma glanced back at Allison, she realized that everything was falling apart. The Watcher was real, but so were the lies, the hidden motives, and the dangers they had yet to uncover. And just as Emma thought she was one step closer to understanding, a new wave of fear crept over her. The mystery wasn't just about her aunt anymore, it was about everyone around her. And as the knock on the door grew louder, Emma knew one thing for sure: she was no longer in control of this situation. The tension in the room was unbearable as the knock on the door grew louder, more insistent. Emma's pulse raced as she stood frozen, her mind spinning with the realization that everything had just escalated. The van outside, the mysterious figure, and now the distorted voice on the phone, it was all too much to ignore. Her worst fears were coming true. Someone was out there, someone who knew too much, who had been watching her every move. But why? What did they want? And who else could she trust? Allison's grip on her wrist tightened, her face pale with fear. "We need to get out of here. Now." Her voice was strained, almost panicked. There was something raw in her tone, something that made Emma's stomach turn. It wasn't just fear. It was the kind of fear that came from knowing things were spiraling out of control, from understanding that whatever was happening, it was bigger than either of them could comprehend. But before they could even make a move, the door creaked open. Emma spun around, her heart stopping in her chest. For a split second, she thought it might be the police, maybe someone who could help them, someone who could explain away all of this madness. But the figure standing in the doorway was no one she recognized. A tall man, dressed in black, his face hidden by the brim of a hat. He stepped inside with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing, who was in complete control. "Emma Daniels," he said, his voice cold, deliberate, and devoid of any emotion. "We've been watching you. It's time you stop digging. There's nothing more to find. Your aunt knew that. You're not ready for this." Emma recoiled, her breath catching in her throat. This wasn't just someone warning her to stop. This was a direct threat. Whoever this man was, he was not here to talk or explain. He was here to make sure she never uncovered the truth. She took a step back, her mind racing. "What do you want?" she demanded, trying to sound more confident than she felt. But the words felt hollow, empty, as though they were being swallowed by the weight of everything closing in on her. She was caught in a web, and the more she tried to fight her way out, the tighter it seemed to become. The man didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, silent, observing her with piercing eyes. Then, as if finally deciding she wasn't worth the effort, he spoke again. "You'll find out soon enough. But trust me, Emma, you'll wish you hadn't opened that box." Allison's grip tightened on Emma's wrist, her face pale. "We need to go. Now." She sounded more desperate than Emma had ever heard her, and for a brief moment, Emma saw the fear in her best friend's eyes, a kind of fear that mirrored her own. It was as if the walls around them were closing in on all sides. Emma's mind raced as the man slowly turned and walked toward the door. She didn't know what was worse, his words or the quiet, unsettling certainty with which he spoke them. She had thought she was getting closer to the truth, but now everything felt so much more dangerous, so much darker than she could have ever imagined. What had her aunt gotten herself into? What had Emma stumbled onto? And why were they both being targeted? Before Emma could even react, the door slammed shut with a force that made the whole apartment shake. Her heart was pounding, her thoughts a tangled mess of fear and confusion. What was happening? She had to get out of there. But just as she turned to grab her coat, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text message, but it wasn't from anyone she recognized. The message itself was short, chilling. It's too late, Emma. You can't run. You're already in this. And we know where you are. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. She stared at the screen, unable to make sense of the message. Who was this? Was it the man at the door? Or someone else? The thought of being followed, of having her every move monitored, sent a wave of nausea through her. Allison's voice broke through her thoughts. We need to leave, Emma. Right now. There was a panic in her voice that Emma couldn't ignore. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was the kind of fear that comes from knowing you're trapped, knowing that no matter what you do, you can't escape. But Emma didn't move. She stood there, frozen, staring at her phone, trying to process everything that had just happened. Her eyes flicked up to Allison, and for the first time, she saw something in her friend's eyes that she hadn't noticed before. It was suspicion. A deep, gnawing suspicion that something wasn't right. Why did you lie to me, Allison? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? About the emails, about the man, everything. You've been hiding things from me. Allison's face faltered for a split second, her eyes darting to the floor. Emma, I didn't want to drag you into this. I thought I could protect you. I didn't know what I was dealing with. She stopped herself, her voice faltering as if she had just realized she couldn't lie her way out of this anymore. But before Emma could process the words, her phone rang again, cutting through the heavy silence. It was an unknown number, and Emma felt her stomach drop. She hesitated, staring at the screen, her finger hovering over the answer button. Her mind screamed at her to ignore it, to get out of there before things got any worse. But something told her that ignoring it now would only make things worse. She picked up the phone. Emma, the voice on the other end said, his tone smooth, almost too calm. I told you not to dig. But now, it's too late. You've crossed a line you can't uncross. You can't outrun this. You can't escape us. Emma's blood ran cold. The voice, though distorted, was unmistakable. It was the same voice from the call earlier, the one that had told her to stop, to stay away from the truth. And now it was clear. She wasn't just being watched. She was being hunted. Her thoughts raced, her breathing shallow. Who are you? What do you want from me? The voice on the other end chuckled softly, the sound sending a shiver down her spine. What we want, Emma, is simple. We want you to stop. But if you don't, he paused, as though weighing his words carefully. Well, you've seen what happens when people don't listen. The call abruptly ended, and Emma stood there, her phone trembling in her hands, her head was spinning, her thoughts chaotic and wild. She had no idea what was happening, what had drawn her into this terrifying web. She only knew one thing for sure, she was no longer in control. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting long shadows on the walls, and the air in the apartment grew heavy, thick with an oppressive sense of dread. Emma spun around, her heart racing, but there was no sign of anyone else. No one at the door, no sign of anyone watching from the shadows. But the feeling that she wasn't alone, was overwhelming. She glanced at Allison, but her friend was no longer standing beside her. Panic surged through Emma as she turned in every direction, searching for her. The apartment felt larger now, more suffocating. Allison, she called out, her voice trembling. There was no answer. And then, the front door creaked open again, but this time, it wasn't the man in black. This time, it was Allison's phone, left behind, vibrating on the counter. The screen lit up with a new message. Emma's hands shook as she picked it up. The message was short, but it made her blood run cold. Allison's gone. You're next. And just like that, Emma knew. Whoever was behind this, they weren't playing anymore. They weren't going to stop. And now, she was completely alone. Emma stood in the middle of the apartment, her hands trembling as she stared at the text message on Allison's phone. Allison's gone. You're next. The words seemed to burn into her mind, every letter feeling like a threat, a promise. She didn't know whether to scream, run, or just collapse in the middle of the floor. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she looked around, feeling a sense of isolation creeping in, as if the walls themselves were closing in on her. But something inside her, a small whisper of logic amidst the panic, told her not to trust her instincts entirely. It felt too clean, too deliberate, too easy. Allison wouldn't have just disappeared without a trace, there was something more to it, something she wasn't seeing. Emma's fingers hovered over the phone, unsure whether to check it again or throw it across the room in frustration. But before she could decide, a sudden noise broke through the silence. The faint sound of footsteps. Quick, measured. Coming from the hallway. Her heart skipped a beat, and she froze. No one should be here. No one except the man in black, the one who had threatened her, who had been watching her every move. She glanced toward the door, the chill of dread creeping up her spine. The footsteps stopped just outside the apartment, followed by the sound of a soft knock. A hesitant, almost familiar knock. Without thinking, Emma moved toward the door. Her hand shook as she reached for the handle, her mind racing with questions. Was it the man from earlier? Had Allison somehow returned, or was it someone else entirely, someone who had been behind this from the beginning? When she opened the door, Emma's breath caught in her throat. Standing there in the dim hallway was a face she hadn't seen in years. It took a moment for her brain to register the reality of it. Liam Crowe. The name that had appeared on the back of the photograph she'd found in her aunt's box. The man who had been with her aunt in that strange, unsettling picture. But this wasn't just some old acquaintance, this was a face from her childhood, a person she had known. Someone she had trusted once, someone she thought had disappeared from her life for good. Emma, Liam said, his voice smooth but laced with an edge she couldn't quite place. His eyes, dark and unreadable, met hers, and she felt a wave of nausea rise in her throat. There was something about him that didn't fit, something unsettling. She had so many questions, but they all seemed to choke her at once. Liam, she whispered, almost as if speaking his name could make him disappear. What are you doing here? Liam's lips curled into a faint, almost pitying smile. I think you already know, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He didn't seem fazed by her shock, by the way her body froze, by the confusion in her eyes. You've been digging. You've been looking in places you shouldn't. And now you understand, don't you? The way he said it, the way he knew, made Emma's blood run cold. He had been watching her, following her every step, just like the man in black. Just like the mysterious voice. All the pieces were coming together in a way that made her want to scream in frustration. But why? Why was he here? You've been part of this, haven't you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. All along. From the start. Liam's expression shifted, a flicker of something dark crossing his face, though it disappeared before she could fully process it. I didn't want this for you, Emma. I didn't want you to get caught up in it, but you were always meant to. His tone was almost too calm, too detached. As if this was a conversation he had rehearsed 1,000 times. Your aunt, she made a choice. And now it's your turn. You don't have a choice anymore. You never did. A cold shiver ran through her, and suddenly the room felt too small, too suffocating. What do you mean? Emma asked, though she was afraid of hearing the answer. Everything she thought she knew was crumbling around her. You think it's all about the emails, don't you? Liam's eyes darkened as he stepped closer. You think this is just about some random, twisted message someone's sending you. But it's more than that. It's about power. It's about control. Your aunt, Sarah, she made a deal, a bargain. And now it's your turn to fulfill it. She didn't think it would come to this, but it did. And now, you have to carry the weight. Emma blinked, her mind reeling. A deal? A bargain? What the hell was he talking about? Her thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and fear. This was not the man she remembered from her childhood. The playful, easygoing guy who had been around at family gatherings and holiday parties was gone. The man standing before her now was cold, calculating, and seemed to know more about her life than she was comfortable with. You're not making sense, Emma said, backing away slowly, her heart hammering. What bargain? What deal? Liam tilted his head, almost as if he were studying her. You don't remember, do you? He said softly. You don't remember the things Sarah tried to protect you from. The things she kept hidden. The truth about why she left all of this for you. At that moment, Emma's mind went back to the box in her closet. The photo, the letters, the strange notebook filled with cryptic symbols and references to the Watcher. It was all starting to fall into place, too fast, too suddenly for her to keep up. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that Sarah hadn't just disappeared. She had escaped. Escaped from something dangerous. Something that Emma, in her naivete, had been foolish enough to get tangled in. Liam's gaze hardened as if sensing her realization. That's right. Your aunt tried to hide it from you. She thought she could protect you by keeping you away from the truth, but now you're caught in the same web. You're here, at the center of it all. And the clock is ticking. Emma felt her breath catch. She wasn't just involved in some random mystery. This was bigger than that. And now, somehow, it was her turn to face whatever dark force her aunt had been running from. What do you want from me? Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her mind was racing. This man, this Liam, was not the person she thought he was. Everything had been a lie. He had been playing some long game, and Emma was now a piece in it. But why? Liam didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate step toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. What do I want from you? He repeated, his voice low and dangerous. I want you to finish what your aunt started. I want you to take her place. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Take her place? Before she could react, Liam was already turning to leave, his words hanging in the air like a curse. Don't worry, Emma. You'll understand soon enough. And when you do, it'll be too late. With that, he stepped out into the hallway, leaving Emma standing there in the dark, her mind reeling with questions she couldn't even begin to answer. She was left alone in the apartment, the weight of his words sinking in like a stone. Her aunt hadn't just disappeared. She had left a legacy, a curse, that Emma had unknowingly inherited. And now, the question wasn't how she would survive this. It was if she could. Because the moment she started digging, she had crossed a line. And there was no turning back. The days following Liam's visit felt like a blur, as if the world had shifted under Emma's feet, and now she was walking through a strange and twisted reality where nothing made sense. The sense of danger, of being watched, had never left her. She kept glancing over her shoulder, convinced that someone was following her, though every time she turned around, the streets were empty. The phone calls, the cryptic messages, and now Liam's unsettling words all combined to create an atmosphere so thick with fear it was almost suffocating. It was as if her life had become a puzzle, and every piece she tried to fit into place only revealed another dark corner of a picture she wasn't prepared to see. The nights were the hardest. Alone in her apartment, the silence seemed to press in on her from all sides. She tried to distract herself by calling friends, even checking her social media accounts, but the fleeting sense of normalcy that once existed felt like a distant memory. She found herself staring at the photo of her aunt once more, the one where Sarah and Liam were standing side by side, a secret hidden beneath their smiles. What had her aunt been involved in? Why had she kept these things from her? And why had Emma's life now become a part of it all? But it wasn't just the fear that gnawed at her, it was the gnawing question of trust. She needed answers, but the people closest to her were becoming increasingly unpredictable. Emma had already started to suspect that her best friend, Alison, had been hiding something. The way she avoided certain questions, the way she flinched when Emma mentioned Liam's name, it all pointed to something deeper. And it wasn't just Alison. Emma had found an unsettling truth in one of the texts she had received: "You're not the only one who's been lied to." The warning sent a chill down her spine. Was there someone else she needed to protect? Someone who was just as much a part of this twisted game as she was? It was late one night, as the world outside lay cloaked in darkness, that Emma made the decision. She had to confront Alison. She had to know if her suspicions were right. There was too much at stake now, too many unanswered questions that hung in the air like a thick fog. With a determined breath, Emma dialed Alison's number. It rang 3 times before her friend picked up, her voice sounding hesitant, as if she already knew why Emma was calling. Emma. Allison's voice cracked, laced with something Emma couldn't quite place: guilt. Fear. What's going on? Where are you? Emma asked, her voice firm, but the nerves were still there, twisting in her stomach. She had to get to the truth, no matter the cost. I'm at home, Allison replied, though there was a hesitation in her voice that Emma didn't like. Is everything okay? I need to see you. Now. It's important, Emma said, feeling her pulse quicken. There was no turning back now. She needed answers. We need to talk. There was a long pause before Allison finally sighed. Fine. I'll be there in a few minutes. But, Emma, please, don't go down this road. The words hit Emma like a slap, but she wasn't going to stop now. She had already come too far. She needed to understand why Allison had been acting strange, why her best friend was so terrified of the truth. And deep down, she feared that Allison had been part of this all along. That somehow, her best friend had been in on the secret, protecting something darker that Emma had yet to uncover. When Allison arrived, the tension between them was palpable. There was no small talk, no pleasantries. The door shut behind Allison with a soft click, and Emma immediately turned to face her, her voice low but full of urgency. Allison, what's going on? Why didn't you tell me about Liam? Why didn't you tell me about any of this? All of it, the emails, the messages, the danger we're in. You've been hiding something from me, and I need to know what it is. Allison shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the floor, avoiding Emma's gaze. Emma could feel her heart pounding in her chest, the weight of their friendship suddenly feeling much heavier. Was this going to be the moment when everything shattered? I didn't want to drag you into this, Allison finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I swear, I was trying to protect you. I didn't know who else to turn to. Liam, he's not who you think he is. He's part of something. Something dangerous. But Emma, you don't understand, there's no escaping it. Emma's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? What is all of this? Who is Liam? Why didn't you tell me about the truth? About my aunt? Allison flinched, her eyes welling up with unshed tears. I didn't know how to tell you. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this, but it has. I was involved with them before. Liam, your aunt, the whole thing. I thought I could protect you, but it was a lie. The moment you started digging into Sarah's past, I knew it was already too late. I couldn't stop it. I didn't know how. Emma's head was spinning, her emotions a chaotic storm of disbelief, anger, and betrayal. She had trusted Allison with everything. They had grown up together, shared secrets, fears, dreams. But now, her best friend was telling her that she had been part of the web of deception all along. She had kept Emma in the dark, shielding her from the truth, all while Emma had been stumbling through a labyrinth of lies. The worst part? She was still in the dark. Allison knew more than she was telling, but Emma couldn't quite get her to open up fully. Why didn't you warn me about Liam? Emma asked, her voice a mix of accusation and desperation. Why didn't you just tell me the truth? Allison's eyes were filled with anguish. I couldn't. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I kept you away from it, you would be safe. But you have to understand, this isn't something you can walk away from. The moment you started looking into your aunt's past, you stepped into a game that doesn't let people out. Liam, your aunt, they're all part of something bigger. And now, they're coming for you. You can't just hide from this anymore, Emma. You have to choose. Choose? Emma repeated, her voice rising with panic. What do you mean, choose? Allison's eyes flicked to the door, then back to Emma, her expression tightening. There's only one way out. You can stop now, leave everything behind, and try to live a normal life. Or you can keep going, keep searching for the truth. But know this, if you do, they'll come for you, and they won't stop. They'll make sure you never get away from them. You'll lose everything. Emma stood frozen, the weight of her best friend's words hanging in the air like an impossible ultimatum. She had always considered herself someone who would fight for the truth, someone who would never back down in the face of a challenge. But now, facing this stark choice, she couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what path she chose, it would lead her down a road filled with irreversible consequences. The decision felt like a dagger in her chest, as if she was being torn in two. On one side was the desire for safety, to walk away from this twisted world of secrets and lies, to keep her life intact, her relationships undamaged. On the other was the pull of the truth, the need to understand everything, to confront the dark past her aunt had left behind, even if it meant risking her own life. In that moment, the apartment felt suffocating, the air thick with tension, and the question lingered between them, unanswered, yet impossible to ignore. Could Emma trust Allison, or had she been just another piece in a game that was way beyond their control? And would the truth be worth the cost? Would it ever be possible to escape this nightmare, or had Emma already sealed her fate by looking too deep? The weight of everything that had happened, the lies, the betrayal, the terror, pressed down on Emma like a suffocating weight. She was cornered, trapped in a web of conspiracy that seemed to stretch endlessly around her. Every turn, every path she tried to take only led to more questions, more dangers, and more betrayal. Allison had stepped aside, her eyes avoiding Emma's gaze as the figures closed in. They weren't just some hired goons, they were part of something far bigger. And Emma had become an unwilling key to unraveling it all. The air in the room felt thick, oppressive, as though the walls were closing in. Her breath came in shallow gasps as her mind raced, trying to connect the dots: Allison's betrayal, her mother's cryptic warning, the symbols, the messages, everything she had uncovered. But the final piece hadn't clicked. She had to know the truth. She couldn't leave this room without understanding what had happened to her aunt, to Sarah, to everything. What was really going on? One of the masked figures stepped forward, his voice a low rumble. "You've come too far, Emma. You're in the middle of something far more dangerous than you can imagine. And now, it's too late to turn back." The words hit her like a punch to the gut, and she felt her body freeze. Too late. Could she really be beyond the point of no return? "Who are you?" Emma demanded, her voice shaking with both anger and fear. "Who the hell are you people? What do you want from me?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he exchanged a brief, unreadable glance with his companion, before slowly pulling off his mask. The man's face was strikingly familiar. Her stomach dropped. The realization hit her like a wave crashing against the shore. Liam. It was him. The same Liam who had first contacted her under the guise of wanting to protect her. The same man who had seemed so concerned, so willing to help. "Liam." Emma's voice cracked, disbelief written all over her face. You were in on this all along." Liam gave her a slow, calculating smile. "In on it?" He laughed darkly. "No, Emma. I am the one running it." Her world tilted again. It was as if all the puzzle pieces finally clicked into place, but the picture that emerged was a nightmare. Sarah, her aunt, had been involved with him. All the cryptic emails, the messages, the warnings, they had all been part of his plan. Her aunt had been trying to protect Emma from the very man who had now cornered her. "This wasn't just about your aunt, Emma," Liam said, his voice smooth but chilling. "It's about power. Control. We've been pulling strings for years. Sarah was a part of it, just like your mother. She wanted to protect you, but she couldn't. She was always going to be a pawn, just like you are now." Emma's heart raced, the betrayal so deep it made her head spin. Her mother was involved. Her aunt had known about this and kept it from her. Her world, everything she thought she knew, was collapsing in real time, and she didn't know how much more she could take. But she couldn't back down now. If there was one thing she had learned in all of this, it was that she had to fight. She couldn't let Liam, or anyone, control her life any longer. "You think you've won, don't you?" Emma spat, anger and adrenaline surging through her. "You think you've got everything under control, but you're wrong. You're not the only one who can dig into the past. You're not the only one who can uncover secrets." She turned toward Allison, her voice trembling with both fear and defiance. "You were supposed to protect me. I trusted you." Allison's eyes met hers, a flicker of guilt flashing before she quickly masked it with a cold expression. "I didn't have a choice, Emma. You don't understand the depth of this. There's no walking away. There never was. If you try to stop him now, you'll die, just like Sarah did." The words hit Emma harder than she anticipated. She thought she had already known the depths of betrayal, but hearing Allison say it so bluntly made everything feel real. Sarah had tried to warn her, and now it seemed the same fate awaited her if she didn't play by their rules. But then, something snapped inside Emma. She wasn't going to let them control her. Not now. Not ever. She wasn't Sarah. She wasn't Allison. She wasn't some pawn in a game they thought they could control. She was going to end this. "I'm not afraid of you," Emma said, her voice steady, though every part of her wanted to run. She was done being terrified. She was done being manipulated. She had the truth on her side, and that was the only weapon she needed. Liam's smile only widened, his eyes gleaming with malicious amusement. "You think you have the power to stop this? You think anyone will believe you? You think anyone can stop it? You're nothing. You'll be silenced, like everyone else who's ever tried to get in our way." Emma's hands clenched into fists, but just as she was about to move toward him, a sudden noise, loud, sharp, like the sound of something heavy falling, shattered the moment. She turned just in time to see the second figure, the one who had been standing silently beside Liam, collapse to the floor, unconscious. A gasp escaped Emma's lips, her mind reeling. Who? What just happened? From the shadows, a new figure stepped forward. Emma's eyes widened as recognition hit her. It was her mother. But she wasn't alone, there was someone else beside her, someone Emma hadn't expected to see. "Mom! What the hell is going on?" Emma cried, her voice breaking as the confusion hit a fever pitch. Her mother, grim-faced and holding a gun, stepped toward the fallen figure. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes locked onto Emma's, and for the first time, Emma saw the full truth, the burden, the guilt, the fear in her mother's eyes. "We couldn't let it go any longer," her mother said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Liam's not the only one who's been manipulating you. It's bigger than him. There are people behind all of this, people with power, people who pull the strings. But I'm not going to let them take you too, Emma." Liam's confident smirk faltered as he realized what was happening. "You've turned against me." Her mother's grip tightened on the gun, her eyes narrowing. "I've turned against all of it. And you're not going to hurt my daughter." With a sudden movement, Emma's mother pulled the trigger, and the sound rang out, echoing through the room. Liam's eyes widened in shock, his body stiffening before he collapsed to the floor, the life draining from him in an instant. The room was silent, save for the sound of Emma's ragged breathing. Her mother turned toward her, eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry, Emma. I didn't want you to be part of this. But now you know the truth. You're free." But as Emma looked down at the lifeless body of Liam, something inside her twisted. The truth was far darker than she could have ever imagined, and as the dust settled, she realized one last shocking truth. This was only the beginning. The conspiracy was far from over. And the people who were pulling the strings would stop at nothing to silence anyone who threatened their control. The silence in the room was deafening as Emma stared at the lifeless body of Liam. Her pulse thudded in her ears, and her body felt like it was frozen in time. Her mother stood beside her, the gun still gripped tightly in her hand, her face a mask of regret and relief. Emma didn't know how to feel. Her mind was a swirl of confusion, shock, and exhaustion. She had faced betrayal at every turn, by the people she trusted most, by the very people who were supposed to protect her. But now, as Liam's body lay motionless on the floor, she could feel the heavy weight of the truth finally settling on her shoulders. It was over. Or at least, it should have been. Her mother's eyes softened as she slowly lowered the gun, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want this for you, Emma. I never wanted you to be part of this world. I thought I could protect you, but I was wrong. I'm sorry. All of this, it's my fault." Emma swallowed hard, the weight of her mother's words cutting deep. "You should have told me the truth. I deserved to know. All of it." Her mother nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I know. But I was trying to keep you safe. I thought if you never knew, you would never get pulled into it. But that's not how it works. Not in this world." Emma took a deep breath, the anger and confusion inside her bubbling up again. "But I did get pulled into it. You didn't protect me, Mom. You didn't protect Sarah. And now I've lost everything." Her voice cracked as she said it, and the tears she had been holding back finally spilled over. For all the strength she had shown, for all the fight she had put up, the pain of it all hit her like a flood. The loss of her aunt, the lies she had lived with, the betrayal by those closest to her, it was too much to carry alone. And yet, that's exactly what she had to do now. Alone. Her mother stepped closer, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder. "You're not alone, Emma. You never were. I've always been here for you, even if you didn't see it. And now, we'll make sure no one else falls victim to this." But as Emma stood there, processing the weight of her mother's words, something deep within her stirred. A sense of unease, a creeping feeling that this wasn't truly over. There was too much left unanswered. Too many questions. Too many shadows still lurking in the corners of her mind. The truth about the conspiracy had been unveiled, but she knew, deep down, that this was just the surface of something much darker. The authorities had been called, and the bodies had been removed. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't done. The network Liam had been part of wasn't small, it was vast, entrenched in places Emma couldn't even imagine. Her mother had given her the peace she'd craved for so long, but it was clear now that peace wasn't guaranteed. No matter how much she tried to move on, the past had a way of haunting her, and the people who had orchestrated everything were still out there, watching, waiting. As the days passed, Emma tried to return to some semblance of normality. She took time to grieve for her aunt and to process everything that had happened. She distanced herself from the world she had known, cutting ties with anyone who might still be involved in the conspiracy. She sought therapy, trying to make sense of the trauma and the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Yet, despite everything, she couldn't shake the sense that something was just beyond her reach, just out of sight. Then, one evening, as Emma was returning to her apartment after a long day, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A single envelope, placed carefully on her doorstep. No name, no return address, just the same symbol she had seen on the messages from her aunt. The same symbol that had haunted her throughout this entire ordeal. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the envelope. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, leaving it there and walking away. But she knew that wasn't possible. This wasn't something she could run from anymore. With shaking hands, she picked it up, her heart pounding in her chest as she ripped it open. Inside, there was just a single sheet of paper. The message was simple, yet it made Emma's stomach drop. "You may have stopped us, but you haven't seen the full picture. The game is just beginning. You've been warned." The weight of those words hit Emma like a tidal wave. It wasn't over. In fact, it was far from over. The conspiracy had been exposed, but the people behind it were still out there, watching, waiting. The question was no longer about what they were hiding, but who they were. And now, Emma knew that she was once again caught in their game, whether she liked it or not. She crumpled the paper in her hand, standing frozen on the doorstep. It had all been too much, too many lies, too many threats, too much pain. But as she stood there, the realization hit her hard. She couldn't run from this. Not anymore. The truth had always been right in front of her, hidden behind layers of deception and darkness. But now, she had the power to finish it. She was no longer just a pawn. She was a player. And no matter what came next, she would make sure the truth was exposed. But as she looked down the empty street, something gnawed at her. Who else was watching? She couldn't answer that question. Not yet. But she knew one thing for sure, this story wasn't finished. It wasn't finished for her, and it certainly wasn't finished for anyone else who had been touched by this shadowy world. There were still pieces of the puzzle to be found, and Emma had just been reminded that the game was far from over. As she turned and walked back into her apartment, the weight of everything settled heavily in her chest, but a spark of determination ignited deep within her. The battle had only just begun. And this time, she wouldn't back down. The screen fades to black, the haunting symbol lingering in the darkness. Emma had survived the first battle, but the war had only just begun.